Good evening. My name is Joe McCarthy. I'm the band director here at the high school. I want to thank you very much for coming out, and also thank you for coming out at our newer concert time. This is hopefully a one-time thing. There were some conflicts that made us put this concert at 7 o'clock, so I appreciate seeing so many wonderful faces out there. Couple things, just remind you to please turn anything that makes sound off. Cell phones, pagers, if you still have one of those. Or anything else that might interfere with our performance this evening. A couple of thank yous. First of all, I want to thank the Nashoba Regional School District, our superintendent, Mrs. Brooke Clenchy, our principal here, Mr. Paul DiDomenico, who will be reading some passages for the second half, so he will be introduced to you later on. And as well as all of our custodial staff, our music teachers, and everyone else that helps put on these concerts. Specifically, I would like to thank the many, many cultural councils that helped us and have continued to help us since we started 4 years ago. This year, we were able to use that money to purchase a brand new contrabass clarinet, which allows us to now play lower than the piano. So, there it is. It's the big tall one over there. So I want to thank you very much for all of that. A couple just programmatic notes. The first half of this evening, we're going to start with the national anthem. So when we are all set, if you are able to, we ask you to please stand. There will only be three pieces, including the national anthem, here in this first half of the concert. Following that, we're going to have a real brief, about 10-minute intermission. There are some goodies and stuff outside there. And then once we return is when we will do our performance of the entire Johann de Meij's Lord of the Rings suite. So, it is my great pleasure to introduce you to Mr. David Bailey, our conductor, and our Nashoba Symphonic Band.
Turn that on. There we go. I don't know who built this thing. I think it was me. So I have something to complain about. Just a couple of words on what we're doing tonight. The first couple of numbers on the program, these are all original works for band. Now, normally, when you think of Beethoven and you think of Mendelssohn and all of those people, well, we think of their big orchestral works and their big choral works and all that sort of thing. But they had to write music to make a living as well. And there were bands around then. There were concert bands that played for open-air concerts and for things that happened with the military. And Beethoven wrote a lot for the military. As a matter of fact, a lot of his work was dedicated to military figures. His Third Symphony was dedicated to Napoleon, for instance. Then he scratched it out after he got ticked off at Napoleon, but he was a very political guy, and so he was writing music for band. Mendelssohn was writing for the elite. Mendelssohn was writing music for people who were away on vacation, and he would write pieces for people. They'd sit on the porch and listen to. It was specifically woodwind octet was the big thing then, which is 2 oboes, 2 clarinets, 2 bassoons, and 2 horns, and that was a big thing. And the piece that we're about to play was written for one such group. It was written originally for that, plus a couple of instruments that we don't have anymore. You have to understand that what we're seeing too this afternoon is sort of the evolution of what band music has done. If you listen to the trumpet and horn parts, they're playing all of these open dum bum 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 bum. Sounds like that. That sounds like fanfares and sounds like if you hear bugle calls and things, that's what you hear. Well, it's because of necessity. None of these instruments had valves on them, so they couldn't play anything but these open tones in different keys. And so we're hearing music that was written before these industrial revolutions, when we had these additions of all of these fancy things on the instruments. And you'll hear it's still in the Mendelssohn. The Mendelssohn that we're about to play has it has that same fanfare sort of flavor to it. But we've moved, well, actually it's about the same time, but Mendelssohn is sort of in a new era of thinking. So we're going to do an original composition for concert band by Felix Mendelssohn, and this is his Overture in C. The second half of the program, I'm not going to speak, but we have a wonderful narrator who's going to be working, and you won't have to listen to me anymore. Rattle on. But this is, I should mention this now. The Lord of the Rings, in addition to being a fabulous piece of music, is sort of the culmination. It's where our orchestration or our instruments of the band have evolved to the extent that we're playing with all of these 16 or 17 different instruments up here, all of which sound a little bit different from one another, but have managed to play all together. So we've come from the piece that we just played, which really is only about three or four parts at the most going on at once, to a piece where sometimes there's as many as 17 or 18 individual things that are happening all at once. So what you're seeing today is really the evolution of music that was originally written for this medium. There's a lot of music for this medium, and it was ignored for a long time. So we're keeping it alive. So we will move on with some Mendelssohn.